Hello and welcome to the final episode of the Weed Eater build here on Did I Fix That? So in the previous episodes we talked about deconstructing of the motor, getting that ready to go. We talked about fabrication, actually making all the pieces that we need. And now it's time to put everything together and button it up. So the first thing we need to do is put in this nipple that we got here. Like I said, it's critical that your bicycle has this little piece here. So we're going to bolt, or actually bolt, we're going to use a couple of hose clamps, and we're going to clamp that to the bicycle. So pop that through there, put that on, grab my drill. And sometimes these things can be a little tricky to get them started back again, but we shall persevere and get this done here. Oh my goodness. It's more of my real world struggles here. Okay, now I've got my hose clamps kind of started on there. I had a little bit of difficulty getting them going, but we're gonna go ahead and tighten them down. I just went with 3 of them. Just the more the merrier on this part. There's a little bit of stress that's on this. All right, go to the second one here. And what I want to do is try to keep this thing pretty much parallel with this tube underneath it. All right, that's number 2. Take this off so we get at it a little easier. And number 3. Just a little bit more on that. Okay, that should be pretty good. Now, as we talked about, this is our rod here. It's going. All right, you can pause it for a minute. Okay, so now that we have our little hinge permanently affixed to the bicycle, or temporarily permanently affixed, whatever you want to say, we're going to work on attaching this to the angle iron, the rod to the angle iron. And what we need to do is make sure that this piece is parallel with the top of the angle iron. You don't want it to be on there like this, so your motor's going to be crooked. That would not work. So we want to keep these two pretty much parallel. So I'm going to use just some vice grips. And also, when you put this rod on, you want to make sure that you give yourself enough space to be able to get into the screw head and turn it. So you don't want this rod back here covering up your screw head. That would not work very well. So we're going to give ourselves a good, ½ inch or so, because those are those Allen styles, so they don't really require much space. So now that that's on there, we're going to twist this so it's parallel. And I'm just going to eyeball it. I mean, not making cabinets or doing anything super duper precise, but that's pretty good about like that. So this is parallel with this now. I'm going to go get everything hooked up to my welder, and we'll tune back in just a second. Okay, now that I've got everything kind of lined up the way I want to, I've got my welder set up. I'm sure I'm going to receive some criticism for wearing shorts while I weld, but we're going to give it a whirl anyhow. So I'm just going to kind of tack it on there and then really weld it nicely in just a second here. Okay, so I've got it tacked on there now. So I can take my vice grips off, and I'm going to run a bead of weld. I'm going to weld all the way down both aspects of this rod. There we go. So we'll have you tune back in after I've got this welded up and show you what else we're going to do. Okay, so now I've got my welds done. These look horrific, but you know what? They're going to hold. I'm not a welder by trade. I'm in the healthcare business, so at any rate, it'll work. It's going to hold quite well for us. So now I'm going to mount this back onto the engine using my cap screws here that I bought, the Allen head screws. Mount that on there. And I've got two of these that hold the engine to my mounting bracket. Uno going, and then we get the second one, line right up. Tighten it in, and tune back in as soon as I have this mounted in. All right, now that I've got the angle iron and my whole assembly mounted to the engine, what we're going to do now is, if you remember from the first episode, I bought some lock nuts. And I'm just going to go ahead and tighten these on here just to keep everything from backing out on us and keeping it on there nice and tight. Not required, but I would recommend them. And this one probably will not go on there that well, mainly due to the interference with the casing of the motor. But yeah, that's not going to go on there. All right, that's fine. We'll just abort on that. Now, bring this over here to the bike, take a quick peek, see how everything's lining up for us. I'll stick that in there if it'll go. And there it goes. Oops. Well, need one more hand. There we go. Okay. Fit on there like that. All right, so the next thing I need to do is I'm going to grab my turnbuckle, and I'm going to attach that by drilling a hole in there, and I'm going to just get a piece of metal or something and kind of attach it to the back of the frame here. I guess I could drill a hole actually and put a bolt. Yeah, why don't I do that? Drill a hole and put a bolt in right there. So tune out, and just a second we'll tune back in. I'll show you how I've done that. Okay, so I've got my hole drilled through my bracket, or angle iron I should say. I just fed the hook eye part of the turnbuckle in. I'm going to tighten this up. Okay, and then if you look down here on the frame, like I said, I just drilled a hole through there, got a little bolt, mounted it in. It's clear, it's free here. Not the best looking thing, but now I've got these lined up here, so now I can, oh Lord, tighten up my turnbuckle. I'll show you how everything kind of mounts up. So there we go. Now, if there's any weakness in this design, it's that these turnbuckles are not made of the best metal, and after a period of time, they will have a tendency to kind of strip out, if you will. Okay, so there, we're mounted in, and as you can see, there's plenty of free space here, so you can basically you can ride your bike in normal fashion, free wheel if you will. So now when you want to ride the bike, crank down on your turnbuckle, just do it by hand. What that's going to do is it's decreasing this distance here in between the engine and the tire. So here we go, tightening it up, coming up, And now we're impacting the wheel. No weight on it at all. Tighten up a little bit more and start kind of biting into the wheel a little bit. And that's probably about what you want to do right in there. So as I go forward, it's gonna, you can hear the compression in the motor. So that's how that's gonna work. All right, so we tune out for a second and I'll get some other stuff set up. Okay, and now what I've done, I've got my, like we talked about, the turnbuckles already mounted here. Got that mounted. One thing I did do kind of off camera was drilled a hole through here and put a cotter pin in, or a hitch pin, so that it won't, the bracket won't pull out that holds the motor in. Now this is where everybody's build is going to be slightly different. And this is the attachment of the throttle cable. And two things you need to make sure before you start, just for safety, is one, we have a very good return spring. Look how that pops back. You want a stout return spring here, and you also want a nice one up here. So that's what's gonna act as our throttle. All right, so now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna feed my cable through my routing area. There it goes, comes through. Just kind of tease that up a little bit. Get that up and over so I can get out here and work on it a little bit. There we go. All right. Now, like we talked about earlier, there's a couple different ways to put something on the end of this throttle cable so that it doesn't pull back out through the throttle linkage here. I've elected to go with just a ring terminal. And what I do with this is I'm going to clamp it on, then I'm going to cut the eyelet off and take the plastic insulation off as well. And what that does is create, like on a lot of these cables, they'll have like a little lead ball or something like that on the end. And that's from the factory how this came. It came with a little lead cylinder, if you will, that was attached to the end of the throttle cable. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put that on here. Just have that protrude barely through the end. I'm going to grab my wire cutters, crimpers, multi-tool little deal here. And I am going to cinch that bad boy up right there. Okay, so once again, my cable is, want to make sure before I do this, is protruding through. And there it is right there. And a little difficulty doing it. Let me grab another one. This is the old devil's in the details thing here. So I'm going to make sure that's perfectly right where we want it. Okay, that looks good right there. And holy moly, this cable's so short, not a whole lot of area to work on. There we go, and crimp. There we go. And I'm going to crimp that again right here. There. That's on there. So now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to grab a Dremel or something like that and just cut the end of this eyelet off and the plastic sheathing off. And I'm going to push it into this brass screw here. And we'll tune in and I'll show you that in just a second. Okay, so now we're back. We've got our throttle cable hooked up. Got everything kind of buttoned up. I did add another safety thing that my daughter, I'm sure, would have loved to have on hers, a little on-off switch. Got this on eBay. It was like, $6 or something like that. It was very cheap. So what you need to check before you hop on this thing and start riding it is, one, that the throttle up here returns easily. Look down here at your carburetor as well and make sure that you have good snap back. Okay, so we have good snap. Another thing to check out is that obviously we talked about the engine being operational. Also want to tighten up your turnbuckle a few turns just to bring it down into, actually I'm going the wrong way, let's do this. and that puts tension on the engine. So now the engine's going to turn over. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to demonstrate the bike. Just going to ride it up and down the alleyway here. So hop on this thing, get it going, and just by pedaling I'll be able to bump start it and let it rip. And that's all she wrote, folks. And did I fix that? Yes, I did. Got this thing working. All right, just some final thoughts and flubbubs, if you will, on this build. I'd say one of the things I kind of goofed on, I forgot, is when I drilled the hole for this hitch pin here. I guess you could use a cotter pin, it would have been okay, but I just had that on hand. Probably better to drill the hole this way so that when you put your pin through, it doesn't strike the support tube here. So that was one thing I kind of goofed on. So I probably should have done it this way. Another thing that I kind of messed up on a little bit was down here, the turnbuckle mechanism. And initially I had it in this hole here, and then I had to revise it to this hole because when I had it in this one, I didn't have enough. I couldn't make it tight enough for the drum, the drive drum. When this drive drum here contacted the tire, it would spin too much because I didn't have enough friction on it, or force down on it, resulting in not enough friction from this to this. And I think this tire, while seems like a great idea having a smooth tire, and this is what came on the bike when I got it from the junkyard, or not junkyard, but the dump, was a smooth tire. The other bike that I built had kind of a little bit of a bumpier, very small knobby type tread on it, and it seemed to contact this a lot better. So I may invest in a tire and kind of do a little update video. In previous builds, instead of mounting directly to the frame, if you don't want to damage your frame at all, you can just get a piece of metal and put it here, just a piece of flat metal, like a 1 inch wide, maybe 3 inches tall, so it comes up above this. Kind of bend it out a little bit, and then drill a hole in it, so you'll be able to attach it to the turnbuckle right here. So kind of come straight up, out a little bit, then put your turnbuckle in, be good to go. Like I said, I didn't really care about this much, so I didn't invest in any metal. Overall, this bike goes 21 miles an hour per my telephone app that I have that measures speed versus based on the GPS. It is I'm assuming it's a 25cc motor. It's this HB25. I'm assuming that means 25cc engine. I'm not 100% sure on that. Somebody can correct me if I'm wrong. Then runs out pretty well. A little noisy. I had one neighbor tell me he loved the sound of it, so I guess some people don't care about it. I will do some update videos where I'll race it against my neighbor. He's got an electric bike, see what we can do versus that, and also versus the Beast, the 77 Honda Express, has a 50cc motor. So we'll do some little monkeying around with it and see what happens. But that's it. Overall, cost wise, spent about $20 at Home Depot for the parts that I needed, and everything else I got basically for free. I did have to buy the switch, the kill switch, which is, you guys really need to have that for safety aspect. It was $7 I think on eBay, $6 or $7, and I did actually have to buy some bicycle cables. It was like a 3-pack. Bell was the brand name. I think they were like $9 or $10 at Walmart, and I had to buy an inner tube for the bike that was $7. So, you know, for less than, you know, 20 bucks or so, $25, I've got everything that I needed, and it runs fine. A lot of fun. So be careful. Just one thing I would caution, maybe if somebody has extremely long hair, this drum is spinning. I would hate like hell for anybody's daughter or wife or self to get hair caught in here and it turn into a really bad day real fast. So keep your hands and stuff away from that. Maybe you could build a shield or something like that that goes over it. But thing runs out really well, and I'll do some update videos in a little bit on it. Thanks.